Welcome to VNN. We have a very special guest from Ottawa on our show today, MP Brad Redekopp, who represents the riding of Saskatoon West in the House of Commons and a member of the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. He's also an active member of several inter-parliamentary groups. Welcome to VNN, MP Redekopp.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here today.
You've just introduced Bill C-286 to help skilled immigrants. Can you elaborate on this and how will this help Canada?
Absolutely. It's an important bill that's needed in our country. We've all heard the stories. I mean, I see it almost every week when I'm traveling here in Ottawa. You see doctors driving taxis. You see engineers that are working as janitors or nurses working as babysitters. People who come from other countries to our country here in Canada, where we have so many open jobs, so many jobs that need to be filled by whoever can fill them. And we're taking people that have qualifications back home, and we're not allowing those qualifications to be recognized here in Canada. And so, in some cases, people aren't recognized at all. In other cases, it takes a very long time for those credentials to get recognized. So what I'm trying to do with my bill, which is the Recognition of Foreign Credentials Act, is to speed up that process, put in place some more predictable timelines, a better system and a better process to ensure that we can start fixing this broken system. We have many broken systems in our country when it relates to immigration, but this is a really key one. And this is very important, not just for the person coming to Canada, but it's important for Canadians because we have all this work that needs to be done.
I was reading a tweet from you saying, when you say the gatekeepers must be removed, when you say gatekeeper, do you mean the professional bodies? And how will these various trade associations react to your proposals?
That's a very good question. So when I say gatekeepers, you mentioned professional trade associations. That's one of them. There are government as well is a gatekeeper in the sense that there's so many different programs and so many different people involved that it gets very complicated. And if you're coming this way, you do this program. If you're coming that way, you do that program. And this results in red tape and bureaucracy and time. It just everything takes time. And so certainly for the provinces have a role to play in this as well. We need to work together with them cooperatively so that we do things that work for the provinces, but also streamline the whole process. And when it comes to the bodies, one of the things I am doing is consulting with them quite extensively because they're the ones that have to buy into this, and we have to find some ways to make this work because it's to their advantage too. They're facing the same shortages that all of us are, and so it is ultimately to their advantage to have more capable people ready to work. And of course, they just want to ensure that they're properly trained and properly licensed.
But, I think they will point out that, the qualifications that a Canadian doctor or engineer has will not be there will be no equivalency with, say, somebody coming from India or Southeast Asia or South Asia or Africa or whatever. So how does that work out?
Well, there will be issues for sure. In some cases, a degree from another country is very similar to ours, and maybe there's just one or two things that are needed to bring it up to the level it needs to be at. In other cases, maybe more education is required in order to get to that level. But that's part of what we need to do here is part of the problem today is that there's no common process for that. And what we really need to do is have a simplified process. So if you come from a certain university in India, let's say, as soon as the government goes through the process to say that this engineering degree is equal to this one, or this engineering degree is almost equal to this one, you just have to take these two courses. Once that's done one time, then it's done. So anybody coming from that university has a pathway then. And so as time goes on, we can build more of these pathways. Then there's no uncertainty because today an immigrant would have to go through some kind of an assessment, pay somebody to do that assessment. And this would eliminate that. It would say that, oh, we already know this equals that, or this almost equals that. And there would be no uncertainty about that. And that would help remove some of the gatekeepers, remove some of the red tape, and speed things along.
So what are you suggesting that, say, recognition of this foreign credentials and this sort of step should be federal responsibility? And will that help?
I think the federal government has a role to play. And this is part of the trickiness of this whole issue because you have really three different bodies: the federal government, the provincial government, and then these local licensing authorities. And they're all a little bit different. And I think the federal government has a very key role to play in this, because the federal government is the first point of contact. The federal government ultimately controls immigration. And so if the federal government is on board with this and helping to create a system that's streamlined, that will help. Now, of course, it has to be done with the working together with the provinces. And that's actually right in the legislation that I'm proposing, is that the federal government has to work with the province to do this effectively. And the other thing I would mention is that this is one step. There will need to be more steps. This legislation is a piece of the puzzle, but one of the limitations that I have as a private member, not being the government, I'm not allowed to spend money in my bills. So I have to come up with a bill that does not cost anything. And I think part of the ultimate solution here, especially in terms of cooperation with the province and maybe even with the licensing boards, is there needs to be money attached to this. So there needs to be incentives. And I look to my colleague, Pierre Poilievre, who has also proposed some similar concepts. And as you are likely aware, he's running to be the leader of the Conservative Party, and ultimately, I believe, will become the Prime Minister of Canada. And so he's very interested in what I've proposed, because what I've proposed fulfills a chunk of what he's proposing. He's going even further, which is adding some money to it to actually create those incentives for the province to actually, follow through and really make this happen. So like I said, there's a few steps needed. My step's an important first step. And I'm confident that at some point we'll get to see Pierre Poilievre's additional steps to really bring this home.
And how does this work? I mean, you said it's a private member's bill. Can't it be introduced by the Conservative Party?
It has to. When we're in opposition, the Conservative Party can't enter bills into the Parliament. So only the government can do that. So the only mechanism that we have right now is as a private member.
And do you have broad support for the bill among the Conservatives and the other parties? I mean,
yes, this is a concept that is, everybody understands the need that we have to develop our employment base to be able to fill some of these jobs that are lacking, where we need more people. So everybody understands that. There's still, like I said, some consultations have to go on, and you've identified that with some of the organizations, the licensing bodies. But I think everybody universally agrees this is a problem that needs to be solved. So it's just a matter of coming up with the best way to do it. And I believe my bill is a very important first step in that.
Yes, it is. There are reports that there is a 2 million backlog in our immigration pipeline. How do we solve this? What can be done?
2.4 million at the latest count, and it's growing every month. And it's another example of the government doesn't know what to do. They're getting into a bind, and of course there's been lots of complicated things happening with COVID and other things, but that's not an excuse. I came from the business world, and things would happen all the time. Things would get thrown at you that you didn't expect, and you have this wonderful plan, it's going along, and then all of a sudden something comes and totally wrecks that plan. But in business, you react. You have to solve the problem, and if you don't have a choice. You have to solve the problem, or you won't exist tomorrow. And so that's the same thing here in government. Yeah, there's been some twists and turns in the pathway, and some complications have been thrown in the way of what the government was intending. But I think what they've shown here is that they just do not have the ability to figure out a way through the problem. And so that's why we have the backlog growing. On our side, we've been proposing a number of things, and I would point out our Shadow Minister Jasraj Singh Halan. He's pointed out some great things, and we've suggested many things. The primary one, I think, is that we need to take our immigration system and move it to a fully online system, so that everybody who's in the system knows exactly what's going on. And the example we use is Amazon, where you can go on at any time and see where your parcel's at. You can see what warehouse it's sitting in, or if it's got a problem. And in the immigration system, it's the same thing. Where is my application at? If somebody has gone in and maybe made some comments on my file, those comments should be there and visible. And a lot of what we do in our office as an MP in Saskatoon is deal with questions that people have. Where is my application? Why is it, 2 years I haven't heard anything, please help. And so a lot of the work that gets put onto the government is simply answering a very simple question. Where is my application? What am I missing, some information or whatever? And if it was online, you could see that yourself and you could answer your own questions. And I think that's a very key tool that we need to implement in order to help move us past the blockages that we're in right now.
It shouldn't be too a difficult a thing to do, isn't it? Make it online, everything.
Well, what I've learned since I've become an MP is that everything with the federal government is difficult. so it seems like a fairly straightforward thing. And from a business perspective, you just get it done. But in the government, it's difficult. And this, as I said, this government just doesn't really understand the idea of actually getting things done. They know how to spend money, they know how to talk, but actually getting things done is a whole other story.
And what is your view on this hybrid parliament proposal? It sounds like a sort of a part-time holiday to most people in Canada.
I just came from the House of Commons just before I spoke with you here, and we just are voting right now today on whether to extend these measures in the House of Commons. And I can tell you that there is no provincial legislature in Canada that has any sort of hybrid policy right now. There is no country in the world that has a hybrid policy like this that's going on. And England, the United Kingdom, who is the mother of our system, they aren't doing this. So this is uniquely Canadian. It's uniquely liberal. My thoughts on this is that I believe that it's being used by the government to dodge accountability. We ask questions of ministers. Where's the minister? He's not in the House. He's up on this screen. And he's answering his question from his home or whatever. And the real problem here, that the thing that bothers me the most, is that I expect that from the Liberals. That's what we've seen from them for years. But it's the NDP who are frustrating this whole process, because they're the ones that are supporting the whole thing. And so while the Liberals are at least attempting to answer questions, although they never give us answers, the NDP, where are they? They're not doing anything. They're the ones that aren't showing up at all. So to me, that's very frustrating. And we don't want to see the return of hybrid parliament, but the government and the NDP with them are pushing for one more year because, I don't know why. It's very confusing. So, I guess we want to be the world leaders in being scared of being in person in parliament.
Do you want to tell us something about the vilification of Canadian ranchers? I mean, Saskatchewan is your state. Won't farmers in Saskatchewan be affected by this new rules?
Yes, for the meat labeling. It's a very strange rule too, to somehow all of a sudden decide that having ground beef is bad for your health. Very, very bad for our farmers. Absolutely. There's been a lot of outcry on that. Other countries have done similar labeling, but they have exempted raw meat, because raw meat is a staple food, something that we need to eat. And so, yeah, this is a big problem in Saskatoon and in Saskatchewan. We have a lot of farmers, and it's definitely a big issue.
It's the same thing, isn't it? First it was the oil sands, now the farmers. I mean, where is it going to end now?
Well, that seems to be a pattern in this government where if they can do something that attacks Western Canada, they'll find a way to do it, whether it's targeting legal firearms owners or targeting our farmers or targeting our oil and gas, as you said. And in fact, all our resources have been targeted by the government with some of their bills. And when I look at Western Canada, you mentioned farmers, and I'll use them as an example. Farmers are environmentally friendly to a T. I mean, their livelihood depends on their use of the natural resources, and so they care more than any of us about the state of our lands and our air and our water. And so, I think they often feel very almost insulted that the government says they're not doing enough or they're not doing the right things, and they just shake their hands and go, "This is our life. Like, we live on the land. This is what we do every day." So yeah, it's very frustrating.
You are a member of many inter-parliamentary groups, and are these groups active? And
yeah, absolutely. Some of them are more active than others, but I look at my riding in Saskatoon and Saskatoon as a whole. 15, 20 years ago, there was a relatively small percentage of the population who would be from more recent immigrants from other countries. And in the last couple of decades, that has just blossomed and ballooned. And so it's wonderful in our city now, especially in my riding. I'm kind of in the heart of it. We have probably Filipinos would be the #1 group that we have, but we have a tremendous number of South Asians, a lot of Bangladeshis, Indians, Pakistanis, all kinds of people. And the beauty of it is that so much of culture revolves around food. And I love food. And so we have grown in our city a tremendous number of wonderful restaurants from all these different countries. Great families that run them, and so that's part of my joy as an MP is I get to go out to these different restaurants and sample all the food. So that's a real thrill for me.
Yeah, I've been to Regina and Moose Jaw. I love the place. It's beautiful there.
Yeah.
Is there a Canada-India Inter-Parliamentary group in Parliament? No.
I believe there is. Yeah.
Have you been to India?
I've not. And so I'm very much looking forward to going to, I've never been anywhere in South Asia. And so I'm very much looking forward to hopefully going on a trip at some point. I know lots of people have suggested I go here, I go there. And at this point, I'd just be happy to go anywhere. I love the culture I'm seeing here in Canada. So it really makes me want to see what it's really like back home.
Yeah, I mean, one of our best prime ministers has been Stephen Harper, and he is a frequent visitor to India.
Yes.
Participating in many discussions, and I think he's on the board of several think tanks. And
yes.
Anything else you would like to tell our viewers, MP?
Well, I just want to say that I really appreciate all of the newcomers that have come to Canada, whether you came last week or 30 years ago or even longer. My grandparents were immigrants over 100 years ago. They came from Europe. So I'm I guess, 3rd generation immigrant in Canada. We're all immigrants, regardless of who we are, unless you're a First Nation person, you were here originally, but the rest of us are all immigrants. And so I welcome them. I really enjoy spending time with you. And I'm amazed at the work ethic and the amount of, the way family works together. And this is where, I often talk about values and how, as a conservative, our values align so closely with immigrants, with newcomers to Canada on things like family, on things like the ability to raise your children the way you want to raise them, which gets into freedoms, which is often why many people choose to come to Canada, is to escape some of the problems that are there with freedoms. And we have the freedoms in Canada that we need to protect. And the other side of it is the ability to run a business, to be able to earn an income and actually keep some of that money for yourself and not have the government take all of that away. Those are all values that conservatives hold very dear. And I know from talking to newcomers that those are also shared values. And so I appreciate that, and I really do appreciate the vibrancy and the all of the good things that different newcomer groups bring to Canada. And it really makes our country a better place to be. And I'm honored to call many newcomers my friends these days.
Thank you, MP Redekopp, for taking time to talk to us. It was quite an insightful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.